live in the UK, chances are, if you do, you have spent some time in the town of Great Yarmouth, a place I have heard people affectionately call Yas Vegas. One of the earliest holidays I can remember going on with my family was staying in a little chalet in this town, so I thought why not make a video about it since I went in October. Hello and welcome back to the channel. For the last video of the year, let's go over this seaside town and its history, as it might be a little bit older than you might actually think. Great Yarmouth lies near the site of the Roman fort camp of Garianonum at the mouth of the River Yare. Its location attracted fishermen from the sink ports in the area who came and they made it into a permanent settlement. The town numbered 70 burgesses before the Norman conquest. A burgess was a British title used in the medieval and early modern period to designate someone of the burgher class. Henry I also placed it under the rule of a reeve, who was a senior official with local responsibilities under the crown, such as the chief magistrate of a town or district. After the Norman conquest, it was an office held by a man of lower rank, appointed as manager of a manor and overseer of the peasants in the area. Herbert de Lozinger, the first Bishop of Norwich, founded the Church of St Nicholas in 1101 and consecrated it in 1119. This was to be the first of several priories founded in what was a wealthy trading centre of considerable importance. In 1208, King John granted a charter to Great Yarmouth. The charter gave his burgesses of Great Yarmouth general liberties according to the customs of Oxford, a guild merchant and weekly hustings, amplified by several later charters asserting the rights of the borough against Little Yarmouth and Galston. I do need to point out at this point, it wasn't yet known as Great Yarmouth. At the time, it was actually called Magna Yarmouth, so it wouldn't get confused with Little Yarmouth. An interesting tidbit about Great Yarmouth's history that I did find was that the town had a promise to send to the sheriffs of Norwich every year 100 herrings, as in the fish, baked into 24 pasties, which the sheriffs then had to deliver to the Lord of the Manor of East Colton, who was then to deliver them to the king. Thomas Fastolf, who was the father of another Thomas Fastolf, was the Bishop of St David's, and founded a hospital in Great Yarmouth during the reign of Edward I. In 1551 they founded a grammar school, and they appropriated the Great Hall of the old hospital for its use. The school was closed from 1757 to 1860, but re-established by charity trustees and settled in new buildings in 1872. In 1552, Edward VI granted a charter of admiralty jurisdiction, later confirmed and extended by James I, which meant that they had control over cases regarding shipping, ocean and sea laws. Queen Elizabeth I herself came to Great Yarmouth in July of 1578. And then in 1668, a charter from Charles II extended the borough boundaries to also include Little Yarmouth, also known as Southtown, which lay on the opposite bank of the Yare in the parish of Galston in Suffolk. Because of the difficulty in filling offices in the corporation, and possibly also in response to this challenge from the established interests, Yarmouth petitioned Queen Anne in 1702 for a new charter to exchange their 2 bailiffs for a mayor and to reduce the number of aldermen and common councilmen. This request was quickly granted and they issued a new charter in 1703. Another thing that Great Yarmouth is known for is that in 1673, during the Third Anglo-Dutch War, they assembled the Zeeland expedition in the town, and in 1702 the Fishermen's Hospital was founded. In the early 18th century, Yarmouth as a thriving herring port was vividly and admiringly described several times in Daniel Defoe's travel journals, in part as follows. Yarmouth is an ancient town, much older than Norwich, and at present, though not standing on so much ground, yet better built, much more complete, for number of inhabitants, not much inferior, and for wealth, trade and advantage of its situation, infinitely superior to Norwich. It is placed on a peninsula between the River Yare and the sea, 2 lying parallel to one another, and the town in the middle. The river lies on the west side of the town, and being grown very large and deep by a conflux of all the rivers, on this side of the county, forms the haven, and the town facing to the west also, and open to the river, makes the finest quay in England, if not in Europe, not inferior even that to Marseille itself. Yarmouth is an ancient town, much older than Norwich, and at present, though not standing on so much ground, yet better built, much more complete, for number of inhabitants not much inferior, and for wealth, trade, and advantage of its situation, infinitely superior to Norwich. It is placed on a peninsula between the River Yare and the sea, the two last lying parallel to one another and the town in the middle. The river lies on the west side of the town, and being grown very large and deep by a conflux of all the rivers on this side of the county, forms the haven, and the town facing to the west also, and open to the river, makes the finest quay in England, if not in Europe, not inferior even to that of Marseille itself. The ships ride here so close, and as it were, keeping up one another, with their headfasts on shore, and that for half a mile together they go across the stream with their bowsprits over the land, their bows or heads touching the very wharf, so that one may walk from ship to ship as on a floating bridge, all along from the shore side. The quay reaching from the drawbridge almost to the south gate is so spacious and wide that in some places 'tis near 100 yards from the houses to the wharf, and in this pleasant and agreeable range of houses are some very magnificent buildings, and among the rest the Custom House and Town Hall, and some merchants' houses, which look like little palaces rather than the dwelling houses of private men. The greatest defect of this beautiful town seems to be that though it is very rich and increasing in wealth and trade, and consequently in people, there is not room to enlarge the town by building, which would be certainly done much more than it is, but that the river on the land side prescribes them, except at the north end without the gate. In 1797, during the French Revolutionary Wars, the town was the primary supply base for the North Sea Fleet. The fleet collected at Yarmouth Roads, from whence it sailed to the decisive Battle of Camperdown against the Dutch fleet. Again in 1807, during the Napoleonic Wars, the collected fleet sailed from the roadstead to the Battle of Copenhagen. From 1808 to 1814, the Admiralty in London could communicate with its ships in Yarmouth by a shut telegraph chain. Ships were routinely anchored offshore during the Napoleonic Wars, and the town served as a supply base for the Royal Navy. Port of an ordnance yard survives from this period on Southtown Road, probably designed by James Wyatt, but these and other buildings were destroyed in the Blitz. A grander building survival is the former Royal Naval Hospital designed by William Pilkington, begun in 1806 and opened in 1811. Consisting of 4 colonnaded blocks around a courtyard, it served as a naval psychiatric hospital, then as a barracks. The barrack master was Captain George Manby. During his time in post, he invented the Manby mortar. The premises was then transferred to the NHS in 1958. After its closure in 1993, the buildings have been turned into private homes. Another strange but not nice part of the town's history was that the town was the site of a bridge disaster and drowning tragedy on the 2nd of May 1845. One of the reasons I decided to include this was the absurdity of how it happened. When the Yarmouth Suspension Bridge was crowded with children, it collapsed under the weight, ending the lives of 79. They had gathered to watch a clown in a barrel being pulled by geese down the river. As he passed under the bridge, the weight shifted, causing the chains on the south side to snap, tipping over the bridge deck. During World War I, Great Yarmouth also suffered the first aerial bombardment in the UK by the Zeppelin L-3 on the 19th of January 1915. That same year, on the 15th of August, Ernest Martin Geehan became the first and only man to sink a steel submarine with a sail-rigged Q-ship off the coast of Great Yarmouth. It was also bombarded by the German Navy on the 24th of April 1916. The town suffered from bombing raids by the German Luftwaffe during World War II, as the last significant place Germans could drop bombs before returning home, but much is left of the old town, including the original 2,000-metre protective medieval wall of which 2/3 have survived. Of the 18 towers, 11 are left. On the South Quay is the 17th century merchant's house, as well as the Tudor, Georgian and Victorian buildings. Behind South Quay is a maze of alleys and lanes known as the Rows. Originally there were 145. Despite war damage, several have remained. The Toll House with dungeons dating from the 13th century is one of Britain's oldest former gaols and oldest civic buildings. It backs into the Central Library. Major sections of the medieval town wall survive around the cemetery and in parts of the Old Town. The North Sea flood of 1953 badly affected the town. More recent flooding has also been a problem, with 4 floods in 2006, the worst being in the September of that year. Torrential rain caused drains to block and an Anglian water pumping station to break down, which caused flash flooding in which it flooded 90 properties up to 5 foot high. As you can imagine, any place that's existed long enough has plenty of good and bad history. The marketplace, one of England's largest, has functioned since the 13th century, is also home to the town shopping sector and the famous Yarmouth chip stalls. The smaller area south of the market is used as a performance area for community events for access to the town's shopping centre market gates. Great Yarmouth is also home to the Norfolk Naval Pillar, known locally as the Britannia Monument or Nelson's Monument. This tribute to Nelson was completed in 1819, 24 years before the completion of Nelson's column in London. The monument, designed by William Wilkins, shows Britannia standing atop a globe, holding an olive branch in her right hand and a trident in her left. There is a popular assumption in the town that the statue of Britannia was supposed to face out to sea, but now faces inland due to a mistake during construction, although it's also thought that she is meant to face Nelson's birthplace at Burnhamthorpe. Now to finish the year on a spooky note. I love dogs, I love stories about dogs, I like supernatural dogs as well. They are the best, so I'm really happy to know that there are Black Shuck stories in Great Yarmouth as well. This legendary creature, in the form of a large black dog, shows up time and time again, all across East Anglian folklore, from Sheringham on the North Norfolk coast, down through the region through Broadland and the heart of Norfolk, through the Waveney Valley, and down further along the Suffolk coast and into Essex. This creature has, from time immemorial, struck fear and terror into the hearts of our forebears. His name may vary between Old Shuck, Black Shuck, Oud Schnarlyhow, Hateful Thing, Gallytrot, or Shug Monkey. But this infamous creature is known throughout East Anglia. In 1972, when an officer with the HM Coast Guard was keeping a lone vigil one rough windy night on the lookout station on the South Pier at Galston, near Great Yarmouth on the east coast of Norfolk, he describes what had happened. While on duty at the Coast Guard headquarters on the Galston South Pier on April 19, 1972, dawn had just broken, so I started to scan the coastline to the south of my station, then to the north. Both coastlines were clear, but I did observe a black dog a quarter of a mile to the north of me on Yarmouth Beach, and at the time thought nothing of it. A scan out to sea confirmed that my area was clear for the time being, so I turned my eyes once again to the dog. It was running up and down the beach as if looking for someone. It was about 50 yards from the sea. The nearest description of the dog I can give is as follows. It was a large black hound-like animal, standing about 3 feet from head to feet. I did not notice his eyes at the time, but I feel sure that it had 2. Old Shuck has been reported with 1 eye, like a cyclops. I feel sure that if the animal had only had 1 eye, it would have stuck in my mind without a doubt. Its mouth was open like any dog that's been running, and I noticed nothing outstanding about its teeth. I observed the animal for about 2 minutes or more, never taking my eyes off of it. Then it just faded away, as if a veil of silk had been drawn over it. At first I thought that it had dropped into a hole, but looking more broadly at the beach with my big 30 by 80 glasses, this was out the question. Bulldozers had been on the beach the day before to move the sand away from the seawall, and the beach was as flat as a pancake, plus the fact that the wind had also levelled the sand, so that the beach looked like a tennis court. No question of a hole. Also, the Coast Guard lookout is 26 feet above sea level, so at all times I was looking down onto the beach. The time of 4:48 am was my last sighting of the animal, but I remained observing the area until 5:55 with negative results. Now when the wind blows from the north and is blowing a gale, I do not look on the sands of Yarmouth Beach for very long. There is one further point worthy of note which ties in with this story. Southdown Road, which runs parallel to the river and almost opposite to where the man had his experience, has long been associated with the Black Shuck legend. The road was originally an ancient trackway linking Galston and Great Yarmouth. According to the legend, Old Scarf, which is Black Shuck's name and how he is referred to in the town, it's said that he haunts this road, but it's described as being rather more spectacular of a creature than what was seen on the beach that morning. One account describes it as a huge black shaggy animal with large yellow eyes that glow like hot coals, and around its neck hangs a chain. The account goes on to describe how if straw is laid out across its path, the animal rattles its chain and howls in a loud and terrifying manner. It's also said that Old Scarf resides in the cellars of the Duke's Head Hotel in Yarmouth. Sorta as a bonus spooky story, there is another tale that in the St George's Church in Great Yarmouth, there is a legend that claimed that if you ran around the 18th century churchyard 3 times without stopping, then shouted Bloody Queen Mary, the face of Mary Tudor would appear at the nearest window, and people were actually still trying to attempt this all the way up into the late 1800s. And that brings this video and this year to a close. Thank you very much for your support for the channel over the past year, and please don't forget to share, like and subscribe so that you can keep up to date with us in the year to come. I hope everyone rings in the new year happily and safely, and I will see you next time. Bye bye and Happy New Year!